Hello and welcome to the latest in my constructed video series. This is Brian Kibler with StarCityGames.com, and as you can see on your screen, we're going to be playing a little bit of Modern today. I wrote last week in my article that I wanted to try and experiment again with sort of a big Naya Zoo style of deck in Modern. The thought process behind that was that I feel like the sort of aggressive stance that you can take with Nakatl, Tarmogoyf, Bolt. Is pretty good against a number of the popular decks in the format, like Infect and Affinity. And my thought was that it's possible that the Abzan matchup is reasonable with stuff like Thundermaw Hellkite to help fight through their Lingering Souls and things like that. You do have access to a lot of creatures that you can pressure your opponent's life total very quickly, like Nakatl, Tarmogoyf. As well as sort of large Trump-style threats like Knight of the Reliquary and Thundermaw. So I mean, this is basically the same Naya deck that I was playing, last Modern season, prior to the release of Siege Rhino and such. And I found that it was actually reasonably strong in a lot of those matchups. One of the big gains for this Zoo deck compared to sort of previous formats is the new fetch lands, or rather the return of the old fetch lands. Wooded Foothills and Windswept Heath go a long way toward significantly improving your mana base and allowing you to actually play a reasonable number of basic lands that you can fetch without taking tons of damage. One of the reasons that I actually moved away from Zoo previously was its vulnerability to Burn. Burn is actually a really bad matchup for a deck that was able to fetch very few basic lands effectively, and matched up very poorly against the kind of thing that the burn decks are typically doing. But with the new fetch lands, I think that it's possible that matchup is actually much closer than it previously was. So I'm not 100% sure on that. I still have some anti-burn cards here in the sideboard with Feed the Clans. I think that's one of your best possible options, if not the best possible option, that also potentially has value in other matchups like other aggressive Zoo decks, where your life total is pressured significantly, and you're not necessarily just facing burn spells. Some cards that I'm experimenting with here are Domery. I loved Domery in sort of old versions of Zoo that I was playing a while ago. And the format may not really be super friendly to Domery right now with the number of decks like Burn, but it's a super powerful card in any sort of mid-range type mirror. Domery is a little bit vulnerable to Lingering Souls, which may make it not really as attractive against stuff like Abzan that otherwise might be, but when combined with Thundermaw Hellkite and potentially Bonfire of the Damned, I think that it gives you have a reasonable number of tools to actually deal with those situations. Chandra is the other Planeswalker that I played in previous versions of this deck. Chandra is a great tool for breaking through your opponent's defenses and actually killing them with Wild Nakatl, as well as potentially a strong card advantage engine as well. Sideboard-wise, we have a variety of just generally good stuff. Another card that is, I think, a really strong incentive to play sort of a Naya style of Zoo deck is Blood Moon. Blood Moon is a very powerful card against a number of decks in the format that sometimes you can just basically auto win by playing Blood Moon on turn 2 or 3. And the fact that you can actually get your basic lands again. Blood Moon was a card that I was playing in previous versions of Naya, even when my mana base was itself actually somewhat vulnerable to it because I didn't have the fetch land base to actually get basics. But now that I can realistically, consistently get both Forest and Plains and play Blood Moon, I think that it's a lot more powerful than in previous iterations. So other stuff here, we have Stony Silence and Ancient Grudge, obviously great cards against Affinity. Stony Silence also has some overlap against things like Tron. Stormbreath Dragon is a card that I'm experimenting with here. My feeling is that Thundermaw Hellkite is a better main deck card and probably a better sort of just big flyer to have access to because of the fact that it actually kills your opponent's Lingering Souls. Stormbreath Dragon is untargetable by Path to Exile, can't be blocked by Lingering Souls, can block something like a Siege Rhino. It's super good against the What-Leaf Leech deck. But I think that the fact that Thundermaw Hellkite gets your other creatures through opposing Lingering Souls can kill things like Vault Scourge, and also just hits a little bit harder, I think has some merit to it as well. So those, I think there's a reasonable tension between which of them is the better big flying dragon. But we always need big flying dragons. Bonfire is a card that I've actually played in a number of occasions in Naya previously. I feel like it's a very good card against any deck that is doing things like Lingering Souls. It's excellent against mana creature heavy decks like the Wiltleaf Leech deck. Previously, I really liked it against Birthing Pod decks, and much of the structure of the Wiltleaf Leech deck is similar to Birthing Pod, though the fact that there are like bigger actual creatures makes it a little less exciting there. And then Thrun, Choke, these are sort of just anti-control style cards. I think Thrun may be in a reasonable place right now because the Splinter Twin decks, frequently will try and sideboard into control deck against you. Thrun and Choke are cards that are reasonable against them in sort of either iteration of their deck, because you can try to out control them with something like Thrun and Smiter, or rather not out control them. You have cards that interact very, very well with their sort of control plan. It's possible that they still just Deceiver Exarch twin you or whatever, but that's one of the reasons that I have Pride Mage in the deck rather than something like Voice of Resurgence, because Pride Mage gives you a little bit of extra ability to interact against that kind of thing. So anyway, very experimental. I haven't actually played really with this in this current environment, but I wanted to give it a shot because this is exactly the kind of deck that I really love to play. Has basically all of my favorite cards in Magic, so how can I refuse? Anyway, let's give it a shot and see how we do.